Doesn't it suck when a movie goes too long? You're invested on the edge of your seat, can't wait to just go crazy when those end credits hit and your excitement means something funny happens in your pants. Then the film doesn't end, and another scene, and another scene, until you're sat there questioning when exactly this will finish. They say it's about the journey and not the destination, but if a movie misses that sweet point, then you're damn sure are going to remember that more than the highlights beforehand. And sure, a few days later you'll balance out, but that sinking feeling of disappointment is gonna hang around. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 films that should have ended 10 minutes earlier. Number 10, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It's done, over, finished, kaput. Harry's beaten Voldemort in an epic wand fight, which sounds ridiculous, and the wizarding world is free. It's the end of a 10-year, 8-film journey, and Harry snaps the Elder Wand as he and his friends stare off into the distance. Just imagine what is next for these scamps. Oh, the adventures they'll have. You don't have to imagine. The final scene of the Harry Potter series shows a grown-up Harry and pals sending their own kids to Hogwarts. To fans who are heavily invested in this series, it's kind of emotional, but in terms of the film itself, it feels rather tacked on. Compared to the chapter in the books on which this is based, it's rather slight, providing none of the insight into the characters that Rowling's ending did, making it nothing more than a bit of good old emotive manipulation. The real problem is the CGI aging of early 20s actors, as they all look like they're melting. You can argue the scene should be in the film because it was in the books, but given how varied the series got as an adaptation, one more scene removed wouldn't have really hurt. Number 9, The Riot Club. After director Lone Scherfig's An Education looked at the rigmarole of getting into university, and the follow-up One Day dealt with a relationship forged at graduation, the woman behind the camera decided to fill in the gaps. Sort of. Unlike her previous films, the characters of the Riot Club are barely normal at all, as they hang out at an exclusive Oxford club populated by who they deem to be the best and brightest, and they go around showing off their cash and they don't give a crap. The film centres on one of the club's signature dinners, where they go to a local establishment, get obscenely drunk, and then trash the place before paying the owner off. The film itself is based on the stage play Posh that keeps the focus tied to the one night in question. On screen, however, that's just an extended second act, with the play's ending turned into a drawn-out finale tying things up in a point. You feel a more experienced screenwriter would have had the confidence to get the major beats of these pre- and post-raucous moments into the night itself. Number 8, The Matrix Reloaded. When most people talk about the Matrix Reloaded ending, it's always in reference to all that nonsense with the architect, that Neo saves Trinity by putting his hand inside her and pulling out a bullet or something. I don't know. But for as dumb as it is, at very least it serves as a narrative end. The film may have none of the original spark, but at least there was some effort to tell a coherent story. Or there would have been had Reloaded ended there, with Neo making the decision to do something instead of something else, whatever it was. I don't know. However, afterwards it's all infuriatingly ill thought out and hampered the Matrix Revolutions with too many dangling plot threads. Once out of the Matrix, the crew find themselves assaulted by robot sentinels before Neo just depowers them all. We've watched the rest of the series and still have no idea why that happened, beyond the Wachowskis wanting to just wow some audience members. It didn't work, and then there's some ridiculous cliffhanger which makes it worse. Should have just stopped this when you could. Number 7, Boyhood. Richard Linklater's Boyhood is damn good. Built around the central idea of filming a young actor at various points as he grows up, the film spans 12 years, seeing Mason grow from a little 6-year-old to a fully grown adult leaving home. The film doesn't bungle it at the finish, but there is an argument that it should have been ended before its final scene. The climax we have sees Mason go on a trek with some friends on his first day of college, but given how integral his relationship with his mother has been, it's been more interesting to see it end with their parting just before. Number 6, Blade Runner. Here's a film that went on for so long, odds are that you've never actually seen the added scene we're talking about. The fact there is a happy ending to Blade Runner, with Deckard and Rachel driving off into the countryside, is now treated as a fun bit of trivia, but for the first 10 years of its existence, it was impossible to watch the film without it. Test screenings didn't respond overly positive to the film, with the studio imposing the inclusion of the happy ending in a noir-style voiceover from a clearly disinterested Harrison Ford. As with any studio-mandated decision, it was a poor one, undercutting a brilliantly sullen ending. Thankfully, the film's popularity meant director Ridley Scott eventually got his cut of the film. That's what most of us now know, thank goodness. Number 5, Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 ends with Woody, Buzz and the rest of the gang gaining a new lease on life. With Woody preparing to go to college with Andy and the rest happy to live in the attic, I guess, a last-minute brave way from Tom Hanks' cowboy doll sees him have Andy give them all away to preschooler Bonnie. The problem with all of this is it feels a little contrived. Can you see an 18-year-old who clearly has some nostalgic affection for his toys just giving them them all away on what he believes is his mum's suggestion? We can't. The last thing on someone's mind who's about to leave home for university is caring about the younger generation. And yes, I'm well aware I'm poking holes at a kids' film here. But putting logic aside, it doesn't really work on a thematic level either. Many people have pointed out before how Toy Story 3 essentially rides the same sadness wave as Toy Story 2 did with Jessie's song. Our main issue with that is that both films, despite their completely different journeys, end the same. Woody knows that eventually they'll not be played with, but chooses to live for the now. This is fine when it's an abstract concept in 2, but when he's lived the repercussions of it in 3, it's all a little convenient. We know this is a beloved scene that had grown men crying for the first time since Up the year before, but after we've already had the emotionally taxing incinerator scene, this is rather unnecessary. Number 4, Alien Resurrection. Okay, let's say for one moment you're fine with a cloned Ripley getting some xenomorph powers, and think the team of mercs that film is so desperate for us to find cool are cool and not insufferable assholes. Even if we're accepting of all of Alien Resurrection's madness, its ending is, without a doubt, stupid. In an attempt to give the franchise some resolution, the final scenes see Ripley and her newfound friends return to Earth. Ignoring the common complaint that in doing so they've sent a massive ship crashing into its surface, it just doesn't work. It's rushed and shows a complete misunderstanding of the series as a whole. The film seems to want the returning to Earth to be Ripley's big goal, but that undercuts the fact that she's already been home. In Aliens. Number 3, A Walk Among the Tombstones. A Walk Among the Tombstones on occasion feels like it's indebted to The Silence of the Lambs. Although another entry in Liam Neeson's badass phase is on paper the usual retired cop adventure, the plot with its sadistic sexually motivated killers and our hero coming to the story in the middle does have a Clarice Starling Buffalo Bill feel. The same edge isn't brought to A Walk Among the Tombstones, but it still manages to craft an enjoyable mystery with Neeson as dependable as always. The problem most thrillers come up against is that they find it almost impossible to overcome the desire to turn the final act into an epic action showdown. And it's here where Tombstones does indeed fall down. The mystery's solved, the killer's located, but we still have to sit through an extended sequence brought about by the character's ineptitude. Number 2, Psycho. For most of its runtime, there's not a scene in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho that feels unnecessary. Even though the first half an hour has no bearing on the rest of the movie, it all adds to the growing tension and question over who the psycho really is. Sadly, it's all undone by the psychiatrist scene at the end. Coming after the massive twist that Norman Bates has been killing women under the mental guise of his dead mother, the scene essentially explains what's been going on and downplays any potential sexual intent to the events. It's like a detox for the audience, although you can imagine Hitchcock didn't actually want to give the traumatized viewers a chance to rest. This was probably done to please the censors. Number 1, Source Code. Duncan Jones smashed it with Moon, and Source Code was an equally engrossing film. Those are the facts. Unless you don't like either movie, then just ignore what I said. Keeping its focus finally honed in on its singular story, however, the latter does clock in almost an hour shorter than most modern sci-fi and is all the better for it. Based on an entirely fantastical premise, Jake Gyllenhaal must keep reliving the same 8 minutes on a doomed passenger train in an attempt to stop a future bombing. It's a great concept line for all it's worth. What makes the film divisive is its final moments. It first appears that Gyllenhaal's Coulter is going back into the source code one last time out of personal pride, but a final twist reveals the computer program he keeps dropping into is actually creating a brand new universe which, averting the bombing, he can now happily live in. Because of course, we really like the twist, but it really weakens the film's best shot. A brilliant pan through the train carriage where we spent much of the action showing all the lives Coulter's impacted. And to be honest, it's a shame to see the movie robbed of its thematic majesty. Know of any other movies that should have ended 10 minutes sooner? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head on over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter @WhatCulture. My name is Simon from What Culture, and I will speak to you again soon.